Now, let's start. Thanks for being here, and thank you for having me here. Today I want to talk about the project, so about the real-world project with Eurosport. And the only marketing part I have is about Eurosport and looking into what Eurosport did in the last year together with CA. So you might know or might not know Mike Gregoire, our CEO of CA, is a big fan of cycling. And so we are a sponsor of the Trek Segafredo team for quite some time. And so we have been approached by Eurosport to not buy into a marketing campaign. And what I want to show you now is one of the outcomes of this campaign, and hopefully it's starting off. No, it's not starting. Let's see if we can get it started.
Eurosport is the home of cycling, so we are always looking for new, innovative way to enhance our live cycling coverage. Our goal with CA is to build something unique, and innovation means technical challenges. So working with a major software company definitely makes sense.
In one hand you have Eurosport, and the other one you have CA technologists providing the right tools and expert, and in the middle you have this magical brand new experience for the users, with a live feed, data flowing in any cycling event. It's truly amazing.
This partnership is for broadcast and digital. For Eurosport, it's the ability to deliver data with more speed, more efficiency, and in real time for all our viewers on all our devices.
So I would say that our cooperation is a way of using our tools in interaction with a live sport event to bring numbers about the emotions of the actors. The users have the possibility to check the status of their riders to get closer to the race, get a closer feeling.
The systems provided by CA Technologies allow us to take cycling fans closer to the peloton than ever before. We're really proud of it, and we're happy to see how many people love it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That was my presentation. Right? Okay, no, I leapfrogged a little bit of what I'm going to show, and I have several parts. So talking a little bit about Eurosport and the partnership, showing you the solution architecture we developed, and what the analytics looked like, and what technologies we used. So first of all, I guess everybody knows Eurosport. As you might see, I'm a fat, tall guy, so I'm definitely not into sports. So that was also the beginning of the kickoff. Everybody raised their hands and said what they are working for and where they work. And I said, okay, I'm the pre-sales director of API management, and I hate sports. And everybody was like, why are you in the project, right? And I said, oh, I didn't know I should do any sports here. I thought we are doing something for people who want to look into sports. And I said, yeah, it's okay. So I was allowed to go on with this. So Eurosport in Europe is the #1 if you are interested in sports. So that was quite new for me. But when I digged a little bit deeper into, I saw that they had 230 million of subscribers, so quite a bit. And they are, you can see Eurosport in 95 countries. So, which means you're not only watching English television. No, you have 20 different languages in this country. So you're reaching more than 96% of the viewers in their own language. So it's quite an impressive reach they have. And they also have on their webpage, they have information about sports, not a surprise. So they have a lot of people visiting the page, getting more details about Olympics this year, for example. So that was a big deal, and cycling. So they are the home of cycling in Europe. So a lot of people visit this site to get more information about the riders, see probably live events on that screen. And Eurosport had the idea of going a step further and have a live map for the cycle, for a race. So they thought about including the people on the TV in a kind of a second screen experience to be closer to the race and see more details of the riders. So they didn't show the doping levels of the riders, but they, oops, sorry. But they collected some of the measurements also the riders provide to their teams. So I was able to meet one of the riders, or one of the pro riders, and he said it was way easier in the past. If they didn't want to train, they just went off with their bike, stopped somewhere, lay in the sun, and then came back sweated, right? These days, the riders are really observed every second. So they collect the GPS positions, they collect the speed and the altitude, the power they use into the bike, and the cadence and heart rate. Especially the heart rate gives you an idea how fit the rider is, how much power is left in the rider's in the rider itself. So if the heart rate is not going on to a certain level, then they can say he's empty and there will be nothing coming. So if you look on the screen, you see there is a percentage value. So we had to deliver percentage values to not give the competitors too much insights into the riders. So that's the backside of it. If you have too much information about your competition, so you're probably ruining it. And as you can see, they didn't take up my idea of having a button for each rider if you support them and give them more energy on an electrical support thing, or giving some electrocute to the others if you downrate somebody. But yeah, seems maybe I'm not getting the idea of the sport. So sorry for that. So if we come to the overall setup, so it's not a really typical API management project. So we are not really managing. Why is Luis coming into the again and again? So Luis Sanchez, so he's the guy with the SDK for our mobile API gateway. So he's the product manager of it. So maybe he infiltrated my presentation today. So so that was the setup for our, let's say, project. So we had a riders data provider, which is Velon, but Velon is only one of the rider providers. So they collect the data and they provide the data in a WebSocket. So you have to collect the information, grab some other information from other systems, and then provide the information to mobile apps, to the website, and also to the broadcast. So the broadcast got the unfiltered information. So sometimes you can see, if you follow a race, you can see the real heart rate and stuff of the rider. So we also supported this flow into the broadcast. So, and if we look into how we realized or implemented it, we have these Velon providers, and you can see under the saddle there's a small box, not bigger than an iPhone, and this box has a SIM GSM connection. It's collecting the GPS data, and it's collecting via Bluetooth all the information from the sensors on the bike. And then we can register for the updates on this system, and the updates should be delivered to the different end systems and clients. And therefore we used an addition of our API gateway, which is called the mobile API gateway. So the mobile API gateway gives you additional functionalities like an MQTT, a protocol handler. It gives you, as I said already, an SDK to develop quicker and faster applications. So we collected the updates from the riders, but to make any sense of this data, you also need to get and gather some information from a Eurosport platform to combine the data with real information. So the data are coming from a rider, so we have some nice pictures of the riders, we have the pharmacy of the team of the riders, and back and forth. So to get the data to the endpoints, we thought about having a broker as intermediary, because we get 1 to 3 updates per rider per second in a race. So we thought it's good to have a broker in between where we just publish the information, and then the broker is sending the information to the different receivers. So the receivers, like a mobile app, is connecting through the API gateway to the broker and is then listening on a topic or in a channel. So we said experience of the race, but we also wanted to collect the information, and you have seen that in the video, the experience of the people using the application, and therefore we used another tool of CA, which is the App Experience Analytics, or also called AXA. And with AXA, you can get an easy insight in how is the experience of the user of this mobile app. So very often, or you get response, it's slow, but you don't know why it's slow. So you don't know if the user is in Vodafone, is the user in Telecom, is the user in any other network, is the user probably connected via Wi-Fi. In which country is this user? And maybe it's only for a certain country, for a certain provider. So what you want to have is coming from an overview, is your application, is your system performing into what we call a lake of experience. So you want to exactly see what experience these customers have, and all of this not with an let's say code changes, so that you have to change your code to collect all this information. No, you're wrapping your application, or you're including a wrapper in your application to extract all of this information during runtime. So that's not only a, let's say, development time or testing time thing. Again, we have Louis. Perfect, Louis. It's really runtime data coming from the real users. So going back to the overall overview of the architecture, I selected an MQTT broker to broker the information. So I selected Mosquito for this. There were several purposes of this. So it was the performance was the one thing, and the combination of having a native MQ and also having MQTT over WebSockets. So I used MQTT over WebSockets for the web front end, and we used native MQTT for the mobile apps, and also the SDK of the mobile API gateway was able to handle this native MQTT stuff. Because if you look for cycling races, so we have La Vuelta, we have Giro d'Italia, and we have the biggest, I was about to say pharmaceutical event, but Tour de France, right? So the challenge was that we expected 25,000 parallel users during Tour de France. So how to handle 25,000 users and even get an idea on how much hardware you need to support 25,000 users, because it's different than having 25,000 users using a web page, because they click, they have think times and so on. But with 20K of apps listening to the server, that means if we have 1 to 3 updates per second, that means that we have also at least 25K of simultaneous messages. So to scale in that way, we also used a tool from CA, which is called CA Placemeter. And CA Placemeter is a SaaS offering for load testing. So in this case, we have not hammered the system with a lot of users, but we connected to the system and consumed. So we had to turn around the normal load testing system in consuming 25Ks of messages. And that was quite easy with the Placemeter, because it's SaaS-based, and you say, okay, I want to have 25K of users, and that's the system is providing this information. If you want to have the same on-prem, you don't know how much hardware you will need to just provide this number of clients. So to make this a little bit shorter, this was in the end the setup for Tour de France, because that was, as I said, the biggest cycling race last year. So I ended up in having in 2 availability zones 4 mobile API gateways with 8 CPUs each. And I had 4 Mosquito MQTT brokers in the back end. But yeah, the MQTT brokers, I would say I was able to only run 2 because they are really very performant. There was not much of encryption or storing and so on. So they were really performant. And also the gateways were there mainly because of the much sockets we had to open rather than really the load on the system. So the result of all of this was the experience for different races. So we had, as I said, La Vuelta, we had the Giro d'Italia, we had the Tour de France, we had some smaller races in Dubai and so on. And that was the entry into the live map, so you can see how is the peloton, is there somebody in front, how much people are there in front, and then you can click on the live map, and then you can see the details we have seen in the other slide about the riders. You were able to select riders you're interested in and see where those riders are on the track. And we have collected some information about Giro d'Italia. So we had almost 240K of loads, and which means people who load the page or people who start looking onto the races. And we really ended up during Tour de France with this 25K of parallel users watching the races. So that brings me to the end and the statement of this Eurosport CEO. The whole project ended beginning of this year, March this year, because of something which we also very often mention, and that the data is the new oil. So Eurosport didn't get the rights or the right on the data for the bigger races this year, like Tour de France or Giro d'Italia, Vuelta. So somebody else was in possession of this data. And so only the smaller races were left for Eurosport. And so we had to end this because it was not, let's say, worth the whole efforts in the smaller races. So yes, data is the new oil. And if you don't have the data, you only have the pharmaceutical level of the riders. Again, I said it. Okay, thank you for your participation in my talk, and I'm here for questions later.